The rise and fall of R&B royalty.
Before the flashing lights, before the platinum records, and before the adoring crowds, there were dreams. Dreams born in living rooms, church pews, and street corners. But not every dream survives the scrutiny of the spotlight. For every note that soared, there was a silent cry beneath it. For every sold-out stadium, a lonely hotel room at the end of the night. For every award held high, a price that few could see and even fewer could survive. The 1980s gave birth to legends, voices that defined a generation, faces that commanded the world's attention. But behind the magazine covers and music videos, and behind the flawless performances, were real lives unraveling. This is not just the story of fame, it is the story of isolation, of temptation, of human beings being caught between their dreams and their destruction. This is the untold story of the 1980s R&B icons, their humble beginnings, their meteoric rise, and the devastating price of fame. Welcome to BackStories. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss out on any of our ever-evolving content. This is what happens before the lights. The 1980s unleashed a golden era for R&B. Artists like Whitney Houston, Luther Vandross, Rick James, and Vanity seemed destined for greatness. But before the glamour, they were just ordinary people living in extraordinary hardship. Whitney Houston, a shy church girl, raised in Newark, New Jersey, a choir prodigy molded by a gospel dynasty, whose voice stunned, but whose world was shaped by family expectations. Luther Vandross, the son of a working-class family in New York, recorded jingles hoping for his breakthrough. He dreamed of stardom while singing background for David Bowie, battling insecurities about his image and acceptance. Rick James, troubled youth-turned musician, running from legal trouble, personal demons, and military desertion to find his voice in a world that never forgave easily. Vanity, the Canadian beauty longing for love and validation, a small-town girl with big dreams, modeling to survive, never imagining the firestorm awaiting her on the other side of fame's Great Wall. And not yet the wild child Prince would later sculpt. When the moment came, it was electric. In a world obsessed with glamour, R&B ruled the airwaves. Whitney's debut album rocketed her to stardom. Luther's velvet vocals became the soundtrack to millions of lives. Rick James became a cultural phenomenon, super freak personified. Vanity, handpicked by Prince, was molded into a pop siren. But with every hit song came a heavier chain. When the deals were signed and the record spun gold,
That's when
the dreams became reality. But the spotlight illuminated more than just talent. It exposed every crack, every wound left untreated. Fame, for all its brilliance, can be a lonely, dangerous place. Success isolated them from family, real friends, and even themselves. Luther Vandross, despite being beloved worldwide, often retreated into loneliness, struggling with his weight. Then there were rumors of his sexuality and the immense pressure to be perfect. Then there was the machine. Record labels demanded perfection, more albums, more tours, more hits. There was no room for mental health, no time for healing. For artists, this created the machine. Behind the scenes, record labels pushed artists mercilessly. Tour schedules were brutal. Image became a weapon, and artists' humanity was secondary to their profitability. Substance abuse became the regular backstage currency, a quick fix for exhaustion, a numbing balm for emotional pain. It became an open secret. flowing freely at parties, studios, and even executive offices. Rick James famously called it part of the business. For some, it was a creative spark. For others, it was a slow death. Behind the flashing lights, the darkness grew. With fame came whispers, with success came judgment, and with it all, a deep and growing emptiness. Rick James, once a funk king, became tabloid fodder, spiraling into legal battles and a prison sentence. Vanity, after years as Prince's protege and sultry pop icon, nearly died from substance abuse, later renouncing her past and seeking salvation in faith. Whitney Houston, whose voice once soared above all others, found herself strapped in a toxic industry and the grip of addiction that would ultimately claim her life. Luther Vandross, the smooth balladeer, battled health crisis, living in a lonely sadness and passed quietly. At the height of their success, the cracks that fame exposed in their lives became harder to hide, and the world, hungry for their downfall, watched every stumble, every whispered rumor, every public unraveling. For Rick James, the rebel spirit that fueled his rise became uncontrollable rage. Years of unchecked addiction and unchecked fame led to a series of arrests, scandals, and a brutal fall from grace. The man who once commanded the stage with fire now battled for his freedom in courtrooms and rehab clinics. For Vanity, the stage name was no longer a shield. The woman who once wore confidence like armor was falling apart beneath the weight of her past. After years of living fast, Vanity's body began to break down, her kidneys failing, her spirit desperate for salvation. In the end, she turned away from the fame that once defined her, seeking redemption in faith before her untimely death. Whitney Houston, the Golden Girl, faced a storm fiercer than most. Her marriage became a public spectacle. The rumors of substance abuse, once whispered in industry circles, became tabloid and headline news. The world that once lifted her up now tore her down with the same passion. And Luther Vandross, the gentle voice of love, waged silent wars, battling loneliness, struggling with the demands of fame and personal truth in an era unforgiving to those who lived outside the lines. His health began to falter, and yet, true to form, he suffered away from the spotlight, never letting the world truly see the full depth of his pain. One by one, the giants of R&B paid the price for dreams that the world once applauded, but never fully understood. Some would recover, some would fade away, and some would not survive the battle at all. What they built changed music forever, but the heights they reached came with a cost that many could never repay. Some battles were fought in silence, others spilled into public view. In the end, it wasn't the stage that failed them. It was everything that came after the accolades and the applause faded. February 11th, 2012, the world lost one of its most iconic voices in a Beverly Hills hotel bathtub. Whitney Houston, the girl who once sang like heaven had chosen her, was gone at just 48 years old. We mourned her voice, but so few mourned the pressure, the trauma, the loneliness that came with it. Rick James never truly escaped the fire he danced in. He died in 2004 from heart failure, his body exhausted by years of excess. But in his final years, Rick owned his legacy, his demons, and his regrets. The drugs, it ain't no joke, man. It'll kiss you and kill you, he once famously said. Vanity shed her stage name, her image, and her fame, walking away from it all in search of peace. She became Denise Matthews again, but her body had already carried too much. In 2016, she passed away at 57 after years of dialysis and pain. God gave me a second chance. I used it to serve the devil. Now I serve the King. Luther Vandross passed in 2005. After a long struggle with illness, he left behind no scandals, just questions, a private man in an ever-increasing public world. Luther died as gracefully as he lived, but many believe the emotional weight he carried was heavier than any of us ever knew. They gave the world their voices. What they received in return was fleeting. Not every icon dies in a blaze. Some fade slowly, some are buried beneath the weight of their own greatness. But all of them, every single one, paid a price we still don't fully understand. But even in the silence that followed, their music kept playing. Though the price they paid was steep, their legacies live on, and though the lights dimmed, their glow never truly faded. Long after the headlines disappeared, their voices remained, echoing across generations, untouched by time. Whitney's voice still stuns new generations. Luther's ballads still make hearts ache and heal. Rick James' rebellious spirit echoes in today's artists. Vanity's story reminds us of the power of redemption. They were not just stars, they were human, fragile, brilliant, flawed, and they shined even when it cost them everything. Fame gave them the world and took so much more. Their music still plays, their voices still lift, but behind the melodies were broken hearts, whispered regrets, and dreams that cost more than anyone could have ever known. They were the kings and queens of the 80s, and they were only human. Thank you for watching the story of Before the Lights. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did bringing it to you. Let us know who you'd like to see next at BackStories 365.